Welcome, everybody, to another episode of We All Grieve. My name is Kay Rogers. I'm your host, and I am joined today by a very good friend of mine that I've known for many, many years, Pat Newbury. Hi, Pat. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I can't complain. So Pat and I, unfortunately, are in a club that most parents don't ever want to be in, and we both have lost children at different times in our lives. It was about just a little bit over a year apart. We were just talking about that, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, just about a year and a month, and then in different circumstances, of course. But Pat, if you just want to kind of go back and just kind of walk us through what happened to your situation, and we can kind of go from there.
My son suffered from depression for years and years, and we didn't even realize it until he had reached probably junior or senior in high school when he told us. And he said he'd been suffering since probably 6th, 7th grade. So depression is kind of the secret. You know, it's not a disease, but really it is. So fast forward, and he had just turned 21 in July, and I guess he had all he could take. He had a real bad car wreck. Both ankles were shattered. One was almost tore completely off.
Oh, boy.
I think he was suffering from painkiller addiction, and just the depression and everything else, and looking from a young man at 21 years old, knowing that probably the best job you're going to have is working as a cashier somewhere or something like that. I think he just had all he could take and decided he would take his own life.
And so he just, going through what he went through at the car accident and everything, he just really didn't see much future for himself going forward. Did he ever talk to you about that or anything?
He never really said that, but I kind of put myself in his shoes thinking, you know, I'm 21 years old. I mean, he tried some jobs where he was on his feet working at a factory, and every day it was a constant pain. You know, he would come home from work when he was living at our house and just talk about how, you know, his feet hurt so bad, and he just, you know, and then he was living in Arizona with my mom, and my brother had gotten him a job where they were like cleaning up ditches and stuff like that with the company, and just his feet rolling on them rocks in the ditches and stuff. He just said he couldn't, you know, he was just in so much pain all the time that, so I just thought, man, if I was in his position at 21, knowing, I mean, I don't know, that's just me.
Well, I don't have any reason. I don't think anybody would dispute that. I mean, I think if you take a look at the entire set of circumstances that he was looking at that age, and then you include the depression, right, which already puts you in a not normal frame of mind, I guess, you know, where things just seem so much worse, right? And not to say that they aren't, but I think people who have depression suffer worse from that than, and we know they do, right? I mean, it's a proven fact. People with depression suffer worse than I don't want to say normal people, because there's no such thing. I think people that don't have that level of depression don't understand how bad the people truly do suffer that do have it. Going back to when you guys started talking to him about the depression, did you guys see it, or did he kind of bring it to you, or how did that kind of come about?
He brought it to his mom and, you know, talked to her, because it's, you know how boys can always talk to their moms more than their dad, because there's that macho thing of, you know, not wanting to let your dad think you're less of a man or whatever, you know, the old macho.
The whole stigma that comes along with you're not supposed to have feelings as a guy.
Yeah. You know, no crying, no feelings. I can get through anything kind of stuff. So he talked to his mom, and we got him some help, and he was on some medication for it. But sometimes I think the medication for that stuff is worse. I don't know. You know, I didn't know a lot about depression. After he took his own life, Kathy and I really had to dive into that whole realm of depression, and everything we kind of found out is it's kind of like cancer. Depression is the best way that I could describe it. Is, you know, cancer you can put in remission and it'll stay there, and then all of a sudden it might pop back up. That happens. Well, depression is the same way. You can put it in remission and you might be fine for 25 years, and then bang, it pops rears its ugly head, or maybe you can just control it for that long. I had a friend I worked with at the prison. His dad was 50 years old, suffered from depression for years, and then just one day they found him at the barn at some property they owned that he had taken his own life. And he'd suffered since his 20s, so he suppressed it for 25, 30 years.
Yeah, I had an uncle that did something similar that in my early 20s, as a matter of fact, I was working at the prison back then, and he had taken his own life, but he had suffered with depression for years and years and years. And then, to your point, just for whatever reason, it manifested, and he ended up taking his own life at that time too. And from what I understand with depression, and I've read a little bit about it, is, because I think, obviously I've suffered from it. I think, you probably have too, to degrees, right? The grief and depression after losing your son. Is it cyclical, right? It's like that up and down. You have your valleys and your peaks, and you don't know how long each one's going to last. Because, depression isn't like you can just, oh, hey, you've got this wrong with you. We're going to give you a couple of pills, do a little bit of treatment, and you're great in 2 weeks, right? It's a lifelong struggle.
Yeah, they try, but obviously for some it helps and others it doesn't. It's been explained to me like you're in a big, deep, dark hole, and you're trying to dig your way out, and sometimes you make it right there to the top, and other times you just keep falling and can't get out.
And you just never get back to that point where you feel good. Do you think the treatment was effective or more effective before his accident, or do you think it was probably the same before or after? Or
I think it was better before because he didn't have all the other issues, the medical issues that went wrong with the accident. Because like I said, he almost lost one foot, and the other foot was it was an enclosed fracture, but that ankle was completely shattered. It was held. They had to go in and piece that back together by pins. So I think when all that happened, he had all that medical issues on top of the depression. I think it just all, stacked on top of each other. And
it just didn't help what he was trying to get to. It was just more weight on him. Because I remember, he had a similar surgery that we've had, and he lost a lot of weight. Because he was a big kid anyway. I think he was 6'4", 6'5".
6'6".
6'6". Wow, man, I remember
6'7", somewhere around there.
I just remember one time we were at the house and they just helped me unload a trailer or something. He's like, well, why don't we just do like this? And he just bent over and grabbed it and just flipped the whole trailer over. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah,
he was just
14 shoe.
Yeah, he was just a big man.
He was.
And I remember that. But he had lost a bunch of weight, but he was still just a big dude, man. He was a giant human being, But I remember he come over one day after he was doing something. I don't remember. He stopped by and he was talking about how he was thinking he's going to school to become an attorney. And I was
always told him he'd be a good one because with me, he argued all the time. Hey, the sky's blue. Well, it's more aqua greenish than it is blue because this color in it.
It's like, dude, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some kids are just naturally born with that ability to kind of dissect a conversation to get you to think their way, right?
Right. When he was little, and him and I, I'd get on to him for something, his brothers would tell him, dude, just shut up, and he'll quit. As long as you keep on.
He's going to keep coming after you, bro.
Dad is dad, and dads are right, so just shut up.
And he couldn't do it, could he?
No, he had to get his point across no matter what. So
now, I know Nick and PJ had a same issue also. If I remember correctly, I know Nick was diagnosed with ADHD.
Yes.
And then, if I remember right, PJ was also diagnosed with ADHD too, correct?
Correct.
And I wonder, do you think maybe some of that diagnosis had some contributing effects to that? Do you think that impacted that level of depression that he was experiencing so much?
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I don't, but sometimes I know Kathy would tell me that Patrick would tell her that he can't, at nighttime was the worst. He couldn't shut his brain off, and he had a hard time sleeping, which I guess now we find out that comes with depression. Night is like the worst because everything's quiet.
And you have nothing but to be inside your head. You have no distraction.
The house is quiet. The outside's quiet. Everything's quiet. So, he had a hard time shutting things off at night. So he had a hard time sleeping. So I think maybe the ADHD and all that together, I would guess. I really don't know.
Well, the reason I asked that question is because I remember watching Nick with his, and it's a struggle. I mean, and more of a struggle for them than people even begin to realize, right? They can't shut their mind off. They can't focus on one thing for any length of time. I mean, they have so many thoughts and ideas moving through that head so fast that it's very easy for them that's why they don't have the attention span, right? Because it's constantly changing in their head. And I just know people treated them different. I mean, kids treat them different. We know how kids are.
Well, Patrick got treated different from the time he can remember. And I can remember because of his size. You mentioned that earlier. He was so big. We'd be in the store. He's 3 years old. He looks like he's 6.
Right.
So he's acting like a 3-year-old. And people are, they're giving the look.
Yeah.
Or they're
Why don't you control
something.
your kid?
Yeah. So we would have to look at him and be like, Patrick, act your age. You're 3. And then people are like, what? Yeah, he's 3.
Yeah. He's not full grown.
6.
Right.
He's 3.
And that's hard because he outgrew everybody.
Yeah. And he was treated different in that way too from other adults and maybe even in school because of his size, I'm not saying all teachers did, but I'm thinking, because when you looked at him, you thought, well, here's he's 5, but he looks like he's 9.
Right. Yeah. People are, they're equating size with age, right? They think, well, you're that big, that grown, you must be this age group.
Yep.
They don't understand that that's not always the case in every scenario. There are some people that are just either very large or very small.
Right.
Right. I mean, it can go either way.
So I think maybe that may have, equated to his.
I know with Nicholas, there was always that, with him, there was always knowing he was different because of the ADHD. And Nicholas was not, he was kind of the opposite of PJ, where he didn't have the size. Nicholas was always a little bit smaller. And it just, that's how he was. I mean, his mom was real small, so right. Nicholas was never a big kid. And I think he was a little younger than the majority of his class anyway. He had that fine line on the birthday when you can start school type stuff. So I know that he always had an awareness that he was different because of the different stuff he had because of the ADHD and some of the extra stuff that was being done for him to try to help him.
I don't know about Nicholas, but I know Patrick hated the ADHD medicine. Hated taking it. So much that one summer he was honest. I hate it. It just makes me feel, and so we told him that, well, if you don't want to take it, then you have to learn to control yourself. And he did. So he took and got himself off. We talked to doctors and they said, yeah, if he can learn to,
kind of
not act out in school to where they make him, so he ended up to where he didn't have to take the medicine because he hated it so much because it just made him feel like blah. You know what I mean? Yeah,
we went through a lot of that with Nick too on the medication side of things. I mean, we must have tried. Man, you're a busy man.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. Don't worry. I'm going to move this mic just a little bit closer to you. There you go.
I'm just trying to silence it.
Yeah, I know. I always forget that too. And then it comes on, you're like, oh, crap. That's okay. We don't care. I'm not getting paid for this, so I'm not some of these multi-million-dollar podcasters, right? I've spent multi-hundreds. I haven't made multi-hundreds, I'll tell you that.
Right.
But I know with Nicholas, it was, and there was some medications, right? Like what PJ was saying, Nicholas absolutely hated it. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. It didn't make him feel good. He just didn't like the way he felt. And then there was another medication that just made him angry. He would lose his mind. He'd get so mad. And that was one of the common side effects of that particular medication. And finally, we must have gone through, Pat, I don't even know, a dozen different trials maybe. And Christine probably would be able to tell you how many for sure, but I know it was a lot. And finally we found the one that he liked, because I did the same. I get given the choice during summer when you're not in school. You don't have to take it. Not going to make you. This is summertime. It's not a big deal. The one we found that finally he said, no, I want to keep taking it, Dad. I like the way this one makes me feel. I like what I'm able to do when I'm on this particular one. And so we kept him on that one. But it took a long, well, I think as a matter of fact, the year that he passed away in 2010, I think that was late 2009 was when we finally got him on the one that he liked. And I'd given the choice that summer, because school got out late May, as it usually does. Gave him the choice. He wanted to stay on it, and then he passed away at the end of June. So, we had finally got there, but we've been doing that since he was 5 years old. And he was 11 when he passed away. So, it's like it was a long, long, long journey. And I have no doubt it would have been longer.
Right.
Because as they get older and they mature, their bodies change and all that stuff happens. So, anyway, once he started learning how to, when he felt like he was getting more control over his ADHD, how old do you think he was at that point? Do you remember?
I want to say probably around 8 or 9.
Oh, so he was pretty young.
Because he said it just made him feel like a zombie, or he'd take, and it just was just like, it made him so mellow that, he didn't feel like doing anything. No,
he was just, there was no quality of life there, right?
Right.
He didn't want to go play, he didn't want to do anything, right? He was just done.
Yep. It just was like,
Yeah. So, see, that was one of the things I was always afraid of, too. I was afraid of that. And some of them did exactly that.
Right.
And I think sometimes the expectation from other people was that's the level you medicate them to make it easy.
Yeah, and and even the teachers are some of the IEP were like, because we had taken him off that summer, and then he went back to school because he'd worked on it all summer, and then he went back to school, and we went for one of his IEPs, and they're like, man, that's a good thing, that medicine, and it's working so good, and we're like, oh, really? Yeah, he's doing so good. We're like, well, he's not on any medication. What? Yeah, he stopped taking it in June. So sometimes I think the schools, well, he's a little hyper, so let's force some meds
on him
push it to make it easier on us. Not that it's not a hard job for them anyway, but
I think being a teacher a whole other conversation. I think it is a difficult job, and I think in some cases, not all, there is a huge lack of parenting support. Right.
Correct. That's another discussion.
We could have another hour-long recording just on that alone, I'm sure, and I'd probably get all kinds of different feedback. I have no doubt.
Yes.
maybe my listening ship would explode in that one, right? So beyond that, so once he started controlling, or felt like he was able to control it without the medication, did you see a change in him? Did you see like he just was a happier kid and overall and everything?
Yeah, I think so.
And then as he got older, probably got into puberty and all that, and so that's kind of when things changed, and he started feeling like he was really struggling with depression.
Yeah. I want to say probably junior high. Patrick was a big man, but he was what your typical gentle giant. Kids picked on him all the time, which we didn't know about, but kids would make fun of him because of his size, and he was overweight, so they'd make fun of that, and he just never really, pushed back. I don't know if he was afraid that if he did push back, he would hurt somebody, and then there would be,
Probably, because I'm sure, at times you be careful, PJ, you're bigger than there, you don't want to hurt him.
Yeah, I always told him, don't start it, but don't be afraid to finish it either.
Right.
So maybe if kids were calling him names and weren't getting physical with him, then, because there was a couple times that they had made some comments about his mom, and then he took action, and then, then the kids were like, oh.
But, won't do that again.
Yeah, oops. So
that's a hard lesson to learn there, isn't it?
Yeah, so I kids, because of his size and his weight, and because you were overweight growing up too.
Dude, I'm still overweight.
Well, but it's easier as an adult,
right,
most of the time to put up with it. But as a kid, you and I both know being overweight, it's tough, man.
Kids are cruel. And everybody knows it. And everyone says, say, well, we can't accept that. We can't let that happen, but it does happen.
Right.
I think part of the problem is we say, well, we can't let that happen. Well, it does happen. Yeah. So really we've got to figure out how do we stop it from happening, right? It's not that we got, the first part is solving a problem is admitting you have one, right? And so we've got to admit the problem is kids are going to do that.
Yeah, and the old sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt. That's not true.
No.
We grew up saying that, a broken bone heals. Words, you can never take back a word.
That's correct. I tell you, dude, I know when I was growing up, man, I got made fun of. I got a girl's name,
right.
And I was overweight. I was a chubby kid, and I got made fun of. And there's a lot of things people said to me. I probably carry some resentment towards them to this from I'm 48 years old.
Oh, I know I do, and I'm 52.
Right. Oh, my God, you're old, dude.
I know. And there's some kids from my, growing up that to this day, I'm like, I can't, I don't like them.
Yeah, I'm just not going to, I don't feel like I don't have a reason to associate with you, so I'm not going to.
Right. And if I see them, I say hi, but, I would never consider them friends or never, you know what I mean?
You still have that feeling you just want to sock them right in the nose.
I do. There's guys.
But you carry that with you from the things that people said and did to you when you were a kid.
Right. And it wasn't physical. It was all mental.
Mm-hmm.
It was all. And so, that with all that and on top of him being a big kid, and I think, it's one thing to be a normal size, overweight, and then a giant and overweight. Because not only are you treated differently because you're overweight, you're treated differently because of your size. People think you're older, so you're treated different than kids your age. It's just...
Well, and think about that. As big as he was, being 6'6", that's not a tiny person.
No.
Just in sheer size alone, that's not a tiny person, right?
Right.
And then everything that's built is not built for a 6'6" person.
No.
Even any 6'6" person you see, for the most part, and I'm stereotyping here, is not a skinny person. They're just a big human being.
Right.
Nothing is built for a person that size.
No.
There isn't a car. There isn't a desk. There isn't a chair. Everything in them schools are not built for a 6'6" big person.
No.
Period.
No.
So throw that challenge every day going into a place like that on top of it, like what you're saying, everything else he was going through. Just knowing that everything's going to be so much more inconvenient for him, and every day was a challenge like that.
Yeah. And then you walk into your freshman year of high school and you look like a senior.
Right. And you get treated like you're a senior and it's your first day of high school.
Right. I'm sure that, I don't know. I'm just.
Well, I think that's all fair to say that absolutely had an impact.
So, and then who knows? And, we know from doctors and stuff that depression's a chemical imbalance in the brain. It's not just from, being picked on or being overweight and people, you know what I mean? It's an actual disease, but it's the silent disease that nobody wants to talk about, push it under the rug, not my family, you know what I mean? We weren't that way. We tried to help and talk about it, but there are a lot of people who they don't want that associated with their family, not my family.
Well, it's that dark family secret.
Yeah.
But why?
I don't know. And that's, if any of your listeners get anything out of this, don't let that be the dark secret. Let that, you know what I mean? Because it is a silent killer, and you'll never see it coming. There's people who attempt suicide. Those are the ones calling out for help.
Right.
Somebody who, like my son, was dead set on it, you'll never know. Now I look back and I see all the signs. Well, he called everybody he knew. Hey, how you doing? Everything's great. Love you. Good to talk to you. We'll see you later. He called his uncle, talked to his aunt, grandma. I talked to him the day before. He talked to his mom. He talked to everybody. And then the next day, that was it. It was over. He left his wallet, took his ID with him, and left everything else there and walked down a canal and took his own life. So. And
I don't know how deep you want to go into this, Pat, and I'm not going to ask what he did because I don't think that's relevant. I think the point of the fact of the matter is he took his own life. That's what happened. How long was it before somebody was able to find him and then notify the family and get a hold of you and Kathy and everybody that, because you guys lived here in Illinois.
Right.
And you said he was living in
Yuma,
Arizona. So
with my mom.
How long did it take before you guys, somebody figured it out and then kind of everybody started notifying?
My mom had went to church. It was on a Sunday. My mom had went to church in the afternoon or went to a church function or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 2:00 and she left. And then when she got home, he wasn't there. And she thought, well, maybe he was out with a friend or out walking around or something, And then probably like 8:00 and she hadn't heard from him. Well, she went in his bedroom and there was his phone, his wallet, his keys, everything laying on the bed. And then that's when she called my brother, and then my brother came over, and then that's when they started looking. They called the cops, and of course it's still the same thing where, a person has to be missing for so long before it's considered.
Certain amount of time.
Yeah. We'll look, and if we, so then they started calling all the emergency rooms and, everywhere, and they ended up finding him. My brother was out looking for him all night, driving around everywhere, calling everybody he thought he knew. They looked at his phone and was calling everybody on his phone, and finally it was like 5:30, 6:00 a.m. My brother was driving past this canal that was close to my mom's retirement community, and he seen all the police officers, so he stopped and got out and started to walk down there, and they stopped him. And he told them, hey, I'm looking for my nephew, blah, blah, blah. And so then the police officer said, well, what's his name? And my brother told them, and they said, well, we found him. So it was probably, I'm guessing, my mom left around 1 or 2 o'clock, whatever it was. I'm guessing shortly after that, he walked down the canal, and who knows how long he sat there.
Yeah, that's...
nobody knows for sure. So...
And so where were you at when you got the phone call?
I was at work. I was a sergeant at Illinois River Correctional Center working the main gate. My shift commander, I told him, hey, this is what was going on, so I need to be by a phone. Or I need to be where I have access to my vehicle. So he put me in the main gate that day. It was a Monday, as a matter of fact, and because I told Sunday night. So then I was making phone calls all day, and finally I get a phone call from my brother. It was like, I guess I wasn't doing it all day, but like 8:00, 9:00 in the morning. Or actually, I got a call from Kathy. All she said was they found him. He's dead. And I just called my shift commander and said, hey, I got to go. And he said, go. I told him what happened, and he just said go. So I just went out and got my car and left. So, but I didn't know that.
You're fine, dude.
I didn't know that I didn't hear my brother, or my brother didn't say it, but I didn't know that he had left his phone. I didn't know that he had left his wallet and all that. I was just told that they couldn't find him. So I don't know if maybe I just omitted that when they told me that, or what, because I'd been calling his phone all night long. I'd been calling, hey, you need to call, but Yuma's right close to the Mexican border, so I thought, well, maybe he went with somebody he met, and they went to Mexico, and,
Who knows, right?
Right, because he was 21, so...
Maybe you want to go have a little party with some friends and do whatever, right?
But I didn't know that he had left his phone. I didn't know all that. So had I known that or heard that, maybe I might have told him, not that he would have still been alive, but they may have found him sooner. Because he used to go walking on those canals with my dad when my dad was alive.
Right, okay.
And the boys went out there for a summer and hung out for like 2 months, my dad would take them for walks on those canals.
So he had that emotional, personal connection to that with your dad.
Right.
So then you think you may have been able to think of that, and maybe tell him, hey, go over here and check it out or something. Maybe. I mean, it's all stipulation. Yeah,
now,
right.
Look,
yeah, we don't know.
Hindsight.
Well, it's always 20/20, dude.
Right.
I mean, I do the same thing with Nicholas. Could I have seen that his asthma was getting worse? I mean, we had just been to the doctor 2 weeks before that, and his checkup was okay. I mean,
right.
Did I miss something? Did I not pay attention? I don't know. I don't know if there's anything, as I've thought a lot about this over time, I don't know if there's actually anything I could have done that would have changed the end result.
Right. Well, and that's me. If it hadn't been for the support system of my wife, and I feel I supported her, I'd be a raging alcoholic right now. That's probably, had we not been there for each other, I probably would have slipped into a, alcoholic stupor that I'd still be in today,
I tell you, I went down that path.
But thanks to her and our, supporting each other, fortunately, and then, Annie, if it wasn't for Annie, I don't know where we both of us might have been down a different path, but Annie was a year and a half old.
Say she was a baby.
Yeah. She was only just a little over 2.5 years old. So, that helped us a lot. But, yeah, so you look back and you think, well, if I'd have done this different, or if I wouldn't have been so rough on him, or if I would have took him fishing more, or if I'd have, done this with him, or
figured out a way to spend more time.
Yeah, or if I hadn't have been such an asshole, at this point in his life, or if I wouldn't have been so hard on him, if I wouldn't have argued so much with him, you spend a lot of time, at least I did, blaming myself, and I still blame myself at times. I still, it still comes up, and there's days that, I miss him a lot, and I blame myself. Well, if I'd have done this different, or could I have done that different, or could I have been a better dad, or, it's just...
Oh, I completely read. I do the exact same thing. I look back and think, like you said, could I like when I had him on the floor and I was doing CPR on him, could I have done that a little differently? Right. Would that, could I have done something different where maybe my CPR would have started working and saved me? I don't know. I think I blame myself a lot for that too. It's always the struggle, I think, of being a dad.
Right.
And that's not even true. I think moms have that same struggle. I think for a man, our job is to protect our family. And in cases like this where, we've lost a child for whatever circumstance, we feel like we failed that protection piece. At least I know I did for a long time. Yeah. And I still had the same feelings sometimes that, man, I failed. Did I do something different? I blame myself. I think that's maybe just going to be part of the grieving process, forever. I made that statement to people before. I said, losing a child is a life sentence.
Yeah.
It happens forever. It happens forever. When you bury a parent, it sucks.
Right.
It sucks
they're
bad.
supposed to die.
But they're supposed to die. You do grieve for a period of time, and whatever that period of time is, I'm not going to define it. It's not like a couple weeks. I mean, it's a while, but you eventually accept it.
Right.
And it doesn't feel as empty.
No. And I still miss my dad from time to time. There's times I even think, man, I wish Dad was here. But it's not the same hole that you have when you lose a child.
Yeah, losing a parent is nothing like the bazooka hole you have in your chest when you lose a child, because that just rips your heart completely out. I mean, and I think the difference is your parent made you, you made your child.
Right.
You're a part of that parent, but that child's a part of you, and that took part of you with them.
And I think what's really hard for me sometimes is because of the amount of time that he was in the Arizona sun, I didn't get to see him. So, there's still that little,
right
in the back of your mind, oh, he's going to walk in the door any day because, I didn't get to see him dead.
Right.
I was only
there's not that closure
right
piece.
It's that would have been any better, maybe. And I know that he's not ever coming back, but, I think sometimes, like you said, the closure just isn't there,
Yeah, I think, and everybody, I know, because I've talked to other parents that have lost children, and they all have these same feelings we're talking about, right? It's a lifetime of dealing with this. People think losing a child is you grieve for a while like you would any other loss, and you eventually, you get over. If they see you smiling now and life seems to be going great for you, they think that it's not as painful as it was the day that it happened. It's not that at all.
No.
It's that we've learned how to live with it every day and continue to live our lives.
Right.
Right. Because, and Pam and I struggled. We did. We struggled hard. And we had issues with, I drank too much or she drank too much or we separated and we fought. We did all these things, right, because of the grief and the inability to grieve well together up until, these last couple of years where we kind of started getting back on even ground, where we kind of started realizing and getting ourselves right, and we had Chloe, and that was a big thing. And we tried to spend as much time with her as we could, but we still struggle. I mean, we struggled hard. I think it's well known. A lot of people that know us know we struggled hard. It's not a big secret, So it's it's good that you and Kathy are able to do that for each other, because there is a lot of statistics that say a lot of people that have lost children.
It's going to go one or two ways.
They end up in divorce.
Right.
Now, I don't remember exactly what the percentage is.
It's going to go either their relationship gets stronger or they go to divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. They both just suffer so hard.
From what we discovered, because we did a lot of research, afterwards that, and Kathy did a lot, and it was, the lack of support and the blaming each other. Well, it was your fault. It's your fault. You should have done this. You should have done that, and we didn't do that, thank goodness.
With Pam and I, it wasn't that we blamed each other because we knew what happened, right? The what happened we knew, right? It was our inability to understand how each other needed to be supported. I had my needs. She had her needs. I didn't feel like I was getting my needs met. Well, she didn't feel like she was getting her needs met. Neither one of us were trying, right? So, because we were so buried in our own grief, we didn't understand, right? We put that wall up and got very internal instead of understanding that it's going to take both of you.
Right.
And that's where I think over time we've realized that's the issue, right?
Yeah. Well, and me, I just, I only took like 3 days, 4 days off, and then I went right back to work.
How in the world did you do that, dude?
I had to, because if I didn't, I felt I would have just locked myself in my house and not came out. I knew that if I didn't go back to some normalcy, which that'll never be normal, it'll never be normal again.
But what you can make normal again, right?
If I didn't go back to work and get as close to normal as what it was before it happened, that I would just sit in that house and stare at the four walls and, cry myself to, sleep.
Every night.
So I had to do it. That was my way of coping with it. I had to go back to work because when I was at work, I had to be focused. I worked at the prison.
Yeah.
I was a sergeant working the sidewalks. That's a dangerous game. So I had to be there. I had to be focused. I had to pay attention to what was going on. So that was my way of dealing with it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I took almost a month off. And it was just, man, that whole week, though, that went by was such a whirlwind. And I'm including the week that he died and we had to go through the funeral, all that stuff. It was just...
Snap.
Yeah, man, it was just I remember that whole week just being such a whirlwind.
And you're so numb.
Yeah.
And you're only doing what you think you should do, not what you think you should do. It's like, okay,
you're going through the motions and going through. That's all you're doing.
Okay, I need to. This is what he wanted, and this is what we should do, and then he should be, buried here and this and that. When that's not really. He wanted to be cremated because we had talked about that, so that happened, and then we ended up burying him by my dad, And now we look back and it's like, he probably would have wanted to be his ashes spread by a lake or a pond because, he loved to fish.
Yeah, he did.
So, but everything you just get so numb and your mind is just, okay, I should be doing A, B, C, and D.
Well, you're making the best decision that you can at the time. I mean, there's so much thrown at you in such a short amount of time and trying to figure it out and dealing with all that. And I mean, you don't have a lot of opportunity to just sit and process what's going on.
No.
I mean, with Nicholas, we went from, it was Father's Day, so it was that Sunday. He stopped breathing. We went from him, going down on the floor in the house to by 2:30 in the morning, he was gone. I mean, we knew he was gone by midnight.
Right.
But we thought we'd keep him on some support for a while. But by 2:30, I mean, there was nothing going to improve his condition. I mean, he was fixed and dilated. He had no primitive functions where they tested his feet and squirted water. I mean, there was nothing there. So, I mean, just in that short amount of time.
Right.
But even then, the rest of the week, I mean, everything was just such a blur because, we had to go through the hospital, the organ donation, then planning the funeral, planning the visitation, getting the gravesite.
People asking you a million questions and
calling everybody and
then oh gee, I'm sorry. I can't imagine what that feels like. No, you can't. So stop saying it. That's the thing that bothered me the most. The thing that bothers me, and I know people have good intentions, and I know they mean well, but it's been 9 years, and people still that don't know, because sometimes I don't hide it. Sometimes I come around, especially around this time of year, because Whitney's Walk's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last weekend in July.
Do you want to just take a second and tell everybody what Whitney's Walk is?
Well, Whitney's Walk is, there was a young lady, her name was Whitney, who took her own life, committed suicide, and her mother and some family members got together and started walking. Well, it just turned into this big, huge thing. The last weekend in July, they have paired with the Holt Center, which is, they deal with depression and stuff like that, and a bunch of other things that deal with that. But you donate, I think it's like $30. You get a shirt, and they go out to Jubilee State Park, and they have a 5K walk or a run, whichever you choose. So it took us a couple years, but now we do that every year. This year, unfortunately, it's a social distance walk by yourself or with your family or whatever.
Well, however you want to do it. Post pictures on a website or whatever.
Right, but anyway, so this time of year, people, they'll be talking, and I try to promote Whitney's Walk, because it is a good source for people who suffered from depression, and it helps people to deal with it, and it gives them an outlet that, well, maybe if they're having some depression, hey, maybe I can contact this, or I can go to this Whitney's Walk and I can get information. But still to this day, back to that, 9 years later, people hear about it and they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I know they mean well, but I can't imagine that. To me,
it almost feels insulting.
Say that. Yeah, don't say I can't imagine, because I know you can't imagine it, and you can't imagine it. So, I don't know. Just say.
And sometimes right now it still almost feels surreal, like it's not real, right?
To me, if someone would say, "Oh, dude, that sucks," or "Man, that's horrible," that's better than. To me, that's better than "I'm sorry," or "I'm sorry to hear that." I know you mean well, but.
I think, I had that exact same feeling, and Pam and I have talked about that before, and she does too. I mean, it's like, listen, I get it. I know you probably don't know what to say, because it will catch most people off guard. No, you can't imagine. I'm glad that you couldn't. Honestly, if you could imagine, you shouldn't have children.
Right.
That's nothing any parent that loves their children would ever want to imagine, right? I agree with you. I would rather you look at me and say, dude, that sucks.
Right.
You're right. Fair enough. But I'm like you. I put it out there about Nicholas, because we donated his organs, and I've been an advocate for organ donation. I think I took a year. Started doing the advocacy work in 2011. And I'm like you, especially this time of year. April's National Organ Donation Month, so I do a lot of work that month. Now, this month we didn't get to do that much because of the coronavirus and the lockdown and stuff. But yeah, I'll put it right out there. I just put it right out there, and you can see the look in some people. It makes them very, very uncomfortable.
Right.
But I don't think what they realize too. I think the other piece of that to me is I like talking about my son.
Right.
I got 11 years with that little boy. That's all I got. And I love remembering each and every single one of them years that he was alive. Right. Because there's so many fun. And he was a wild man. He's a jerk little boy. He did little boy things, right? And I know I love remembering that. So I like to talk about him. I like to share those stories. Can I ever make somebody really, truly understand how he was? No, unless they met him, they wouldn't know.
Right.
But I like talking about my kid.
Yeah, I knew him.
Yeah, you knew him. Yeah.
Andrew, too.
Yeah.
So.
He's still a jerk.
Haven't seen him in a long, long time.
Well, everybody keeps saying he's just looking more like me now. He's got a goatee like I do, except a lot less gray hair.
Yeah.
But, that's what I do. That's why I talk about him. And it's funny, not funny, but relating to Whitney's walk, back to that just for a second. Nicholas has a cousin that committed suicide, and their family on his mom's side always did the Whitney's walk. As a matter of fact, I believe he's buried in a Whitney's walk shirt.
Oh.
Because he wore it all the time.
Right.
Like days in a row. It's like, dude, have you changed your clothes?
Right.
What? Right?
Yeah.
But.
Well, to go back to what we were just, there was a guy I worked with, his son committed suicide like 2 months before Patrick or whatever the timeline was. And I can remember, I'm going to stop by. What am I going to say? Because you don't know what to say. So, I probably said the same thing. Dude, I'm sorry, I can't imagine.
Right. And I think that's the only thing you think you can say.
Right. So.
Or polar opposite that, you get somebody that they think they're saying something so profound that it's going to save you from the pain that you're feeling.
Right.
It's like, that isn't going to happen. Appreciate it, but that's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, pain's never going to go away.
No,
it's there every day.
I there isn't a day I don't get out of bed I don't think about Nick.
Hurts every day.
Every day.
Some days worse than others.
Yeah.
Birthdays.
Well, I'll tell you, next Monday, I'm going to be probably a little bit of a crab ass.
Right.
Next Monday is his 10-year. He's been gone. And I look back thinking, holy cow, where did that time go?
Yep. July 30th and August 14th. Those are 2 days that are, Father's Day for me is, waiting on one more phone call every year.
Yep. I get it. I'm with you, brother.
I get the other phone calls from the other boys or the cards or whatever, but I'm still waiting on one phone call, and it's never coming.
Well, you're always missing that one more.
Right.
So, kind of talking about your other boys, how did they react? I'm sure I know how they reacted. How have they been able to process this and deal with their grief and kind of handle it the way they do?
I don't know. They never really talked about it. We tried to talk to them, shortly after, and they still talk about him, but they never really talked about. They don't really talk about how they deal with their grief, and I never really asked them. I just always figure, maybe once again, my shortfall as a parent. I didn't go ask. I asked them at first, but now I don't talk to them about it. They seem to be, they've got their own wife, their own kids. They're all, tied up in their own lives. So.
And maybe you wouldn't be the person they talk to about that anyway. They may talk to their significant other or each other. I don't know.
Right.
I know the other kids, if they're having a rough day, I'm not the first person they're going to call with that, or in general. Brittany will call me once in a while and just talk through some certain, things. She's having a bad day, not even necessarily related to Nicholas, but mostly they're going to call their mom,
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Mothers are nurturers, dads are not necessarily the greatest at that. I don't.
Right.
But so you really haven't noticed much of a change in them over time since this has happened at all? Or maybe even at the time, did you see much change in them? They just seem pretty resilient, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I don't know, because like we said, you're just so wrapped up in your own thing, your own grief. Sometimes maybe you forget about the other children and what they're dealing with.
Yeah, your grief almost feels like a cocoon when it first happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does just kind of surround you.
Yeah, wow, that was a good question. The boys, I don't know. It doesn't seem to affect them. They haven't ever really came to me and said anything. And, they both live a very productive life and are both doing very well for themselves. And
well, I mean, you can't hope for anything other than that, right? I mean,
doing better than I did when I was their age.
Yeah, I was doing pretty dumb stuff at that age because they're mid to late 20s now or 30s.
William's 34. He's 35.
Is he 35?
35.
Wow.
And Dylan will be turning 29.
29. Okay. So yeah, so he's a little bit older than Aaron. Because Andrew will be 25 tomorrow. Tomorrow's his 25th birthday.
Yep, Dylan was born in December of 91. So.
Yeah, Andrew was born in 93, and then Nick was born in 95, and then Chloe was born in 2000.
Patrick was born in July of 90. They were close.
Yeah, Brittany was born in 89. And Aaron, I think he was born in 91. I think, because Aaron's birthday's in September. Nicholas and Brittany's are both in August. Andrew's the odd man out. He's got the June birthday. Wow. So, that's a pretty intense story, dude. I mean, it's what you live every day, right? I mean, This is the path you took. This is real life, people. I've talked about the podcast before, and I recently kind of rebranded a little bit. It was How Men Grieve. But what I found is when we were leaving it that way, it was getting harder and harder to find people to talk to. And not that there isn't plenty of guys out there that have things that happen, but I think I rebranded it to We All Grieve simply because I think there's a lot of stories out there that we can talk about, right? And it's real people.
There's a lot of men that they don't, because of the macho, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to tell people, yeah, I cried myself to sleep. Or, there's even, like I said, it's been 9 years. There's days now I'll just go to my room and cry. Yeah,
I do the same thing. I mean, there's and for no reason.
Right. Or maybe you'll see something or hear something.
Triggers an emotion.
Think of something and, or you're just sitting there, maybe having a beer, and it hits you.
And it usually hits you when you least expect it.
Right.
It's like I don't want to say like when your guard's down, but it almost feels like that when you're just having like a normal, what seems to be like a normal day or normal moment, whatever, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, man, it's like boom, and you're just like, oh. And like I said, you just got to go to your room. You got to have your minute. You got to take your moment. Yeah, and that's what I told my kids. You got to take your moment.
Not so much now, but there are days. I don't know. I hopefully people who listen to this, they take away that depression's real. It's not just something that's made up. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't real. That's the biggest thing. You see somebody with cancer, maybe their hair's falling out or whatever, and you can see it some. Or, if somebody's sick with another disease, you can see it. Depression, mental illness is a disease you can't see. It's a real disease. So, treat it as so. That's one of the things I'd like people, especially depression, because I lost someone to depression. So, you gotta, it's real. Don't sweep it under the rug. Try to help them out. If you don't think you can sit down and talk to somebody, or you don't really have to have anything to say, just sit down and listen to what they're saying, and throw a yeah or wow, that sucks, or can I call somebody for you, or here's a number to call, this 800 number, because there's 800 numbers out there people can call that can talk to professionals. So see it as being real. Don't just see it as, well, it's not real because I can't see it. If somebody breaks their arm, they got a cast. You can see that. So.
On that note, I don't really see any reason why we don't end the podcast on that. That's pretty good, pretty profound statement, and letting people know it is real. Treat it as such. I was trying to find, and I was going to leave that here. So there's a lot of different numbers a person can call, right? There is a crisis text number that a person can call in the United States, and it's 741-741. And you text that number, and that's a crisis counselor, and somebody will get a hold of you, and they'll help you move you what they call the hot zone or the hot moment, try to calm you down, to keep you cool, and then maybe give you some direction on, who do you call next, where do you go, where do you find that help. So again, people, if you know somebody, or you're having issues, or you're having thoughts that are, you feel like you can't, you need some help, and you feel like there's nobody out there to listen to you, well, there is. Just text 741-741, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the United States, and somebody's going to be there to help you.
That's awesome.
Pat, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you for sharing that story. I know that couldn't have been easy. But you did a great job. You had some really good, good information, some good thoughts for people. So I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
All right.
Anytime.
All right. On that note, we'll go ahead and call our day. This concludes this episode of We All Grieve. And I hope everybody has a great day. Peace.